There are growing calls for the United States to demand an immediate ceasefire in the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians, but the White House had been resisting and to some extent continues to resist those calls. Now, Biden, just before we went on air, said that he is supportive of a ceasefire, but continued to distance himself from the Democratic senators who have urged an immediate ceasefire. And that group of nearly 30 Senate Democrats issued a joint statement late Sunday calling for an immediate ceasefire as Israel intensified its bombing campaign in the occupied Gaza Strip throughout the weekend. Now, Jon Ossoff, who is, not some strong progressive, is the one who really led the charge in gathering the Democratic senators to urge for this immediate ceasefire. And it says to prevent any further loss of civilian life and to prevent further escalation of conflict in Israel and the Palestinian territories, we urge an immediate ceasefire, reads the brief statement, which was led by Senators Jon Ossoff and signed by 29 members of the Senate Democratic Caucus, including Senators Bernie Sanders and Angus King, an independent from Maine. Cenk.
Okay, so terrific to see Ossoff and Bernie Sanders and the others leading that charge. And just a heartfelt thank you for representing everyone as usual. And some portions of the Israeli lobby called Bernie Sanders anti-Semitic during his 2020 presidential run, as we predicted they would in this show. Of course, Bernie Sanders is the most successful Jewish candidate for president in American history, and he's wonderful in fighting for everyone and people he doesn't know, okay? And so, and it's shocking that there are 30 US senators willing to say to Israel, even something as simple as please stop bombing them.
Right.
That is unprecedented. And so credit to Ossoff for leading that charge as well. Bernie had a great op-ed about it as well. So that is profiles in courage because it's a big sea change in Washington. Biden is super late to the party and on purpose. The United Nations had a resolution, we blocked it. People have been calling for Biden to say ceasefire. Just say ceasefire, it's the simplest thing in the world. It doesn't even mean anything, and you know the Israelis won't do it. It means absolutely nothing. Just for God's sake, just say the word ceasefire. And he would not do it all of these days. When he refuses that blatantly to say ceasefire, what he's saying is green light. Keep killing them. Keep bombing civilians. 58 kids dead, keep going, keep going, keep going. And after pressure mounted today, finally Biden was like, okay, fine, ceasefire.
He says he expressed support for
express support. And like I said, it doesn't mean anything. They're not gonna actually do a ceasefire. Israel's not gonna stop. Biden already told them on the phone, you're all good, brother. Like, well, we're gonna back you 100%. Publicly, he has backed them 100%. Now when he says, we will support a ceasefire. Okay, are you gonna support the UN resolution for a ceasefire?
No.
No, of course not, you're gonna veto it. 14 out of 15 members of the Security Council say yes. America says no, Israel can do no wrong. Why do you kill all those civilians? Because you know you have impunity. It's like the police in America. They know they're above the law. They can kill anyone they like and get away with it until very recently. So now Israel thinks, Biden gave me the green light. I can kill with impunity and no force on earth can stop me, and that's literal.
So a few things to mention here. And I've mentioned this in the context of other stories that we've done on this conflict, but just last week, Hamas had agreed to a ceasefire. Really, it's the Israeli government that refuses to engage in a ceasefire. They want to continue, they want to keep going. So while on one hand, you hear the talking points about how, well, Hamas is firing rockets and we need to do this to protect our civilians. In reality, they're putting their civilians in danger by refusing to engage in this ceasefire that was available to them just last week. So they're continuing with this. And in regard to Joe Biden, Cenk, let's also be clear that while he has now finally expressed some support for a ceasefire, just today it was reported that the Biden administration approved $735 million in weapons sales to Israel, raising red flags for some House Democrats who might think maybe this is a bad idea, just selling these weapons and not conditioning our foreign aid to Israel as they brutalize civilians in the Gaza Strip. By the way, there's now some evidence that they're also attacking protesters in Lebanon, pro-Palestinian protesters in Lebanon. So this conflict could expand to something even worse than what we're seeing. And there have been some strikes in the West Bank as well. So a few Palestinians, it's being reported now, have died as a result of those airstrikes. One other thing I wanted to quickly mention, Biden not only says or refused previously to say that he supported a ceasefire. The only statement that we would get from Biden and from Secretary of State Anthony Blinken was that Israel has the right to defend itself, followed with nothing recognizing or acknowledging the loss of civilian lives on the Palestinian side. So that's an important piece of context. One other thing we should do is listen to Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, who was asked about a possible ceasefire and this conflict. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
You and President Biden have called for de-escalation in the conflict in Israel and Gaza, and it seems like quite the opposite has happened. What do you think about that? Would you support a United Nations Security Council statement immediately to call for a ceasefire?
We have been working around the clock through diplomatic channels to try to bring an end to the conflict. In all of these engagements, we've made clear that we are prepared to lend our support and good offices to the parties should they seek a ceasefire. And that's precisely the message I think you heard from Ambassador Thomas Greenfield during the UN session yesterday. Any diplomatic initiative that advances that prospect is something that we'll support. And we're, again, willing and ready to do that. But ultimately, it is up to the parties to make clear that they want to pursue a ceasefire. Any ceasefire would be, by definition, between them, but we're ready to engage to support it. Meanwhile, we are working tirelessly across every diplomatic channel we have to advance the prospect of getting to calm.
Again, let's be clear, one party has agreed to a ceasefire, that's Hamas. One party refuses to agree to a ceasefire, and that's the Israeli government. It's also worth noting, Cenk, that while I got a lot of hate from corporate Democrats for having the audacity to talk about the conflicts of interest of members of Biden's administration, the fact of the matter is Anthony Blinken, when he left the Obama administration, founded a consulting group, just a euphemism for lobbying group, that had all sorts of clients that they refused to be transparent about. But one of the people working there, one of the top people working there, was a former ambassador to Israel. His name is Daniel B. Shapiro, former US ambassador to Israel and former White House National Security Council senior director. I mention him because this is someone who clearly worked very closely with Anthony Blinken over at West Exec. That's the consulting group that he founded. And they, on their website, like to feature all of the different press that they've received. Dan Shapiro was quoted several times in the Jerusalem Post. In one article, military assistance to Israel also serves US interests. And this is important, right? Because I want you guys to not only understand the conflicts of interest once you have former lobbyists and former think tank founders and former corporatists in the administration, I want you to also understand the thinking behind supporting Israel. Because I mentioned that transfer of wealth, right? How our taxpayer money goes toward the military funding in Israel, and then what do they do with that money? They buy our weaponry. It's a transfer of wealth from the US taxpayers, workers in this country, to the very corporations that always have an interest in war. So he said in this Jerusalem Post article in November of 2019, and I'm talking about Dan Shapiro, there's an enormous amount of sharing of intelligence, said the former ambassador. Israeli intelligence has high quality technology. Israeli technology is high quality. Joint training, our forces training with Israel and learning from them as they learn from us, benefits. And this relationship flow both ways. And so in that regard, the US assistance program to Israel is not an act of altruism. And he continues.
Well, that part is true because it's not altruistic to kill all those Palestinian civilians, but
exactly.
Keep going.
So two more quotes for you. while it is certainly generous on the part of the American taxpayers, and we should feel good about it.
Feel great about it, yeah.
And it has saved many lives, particularly with programs like Iron Dome. It is also something that very much serves our interests.
That's total nonsense.
Yeah.
Okay, the Iron Dome did protect civilian lives. I'm happy about that. That's the only part of that that's correct, okay? The bombs and the F-35s, the F-16s, you name it, all those things that we sell to Israel do not go towards protecting civilians. It goes towards bombing and killing civilians. So this is all just gobbledygook. And hey, listen, Boeing got paid, Lockheed Martin got paid, we all got paid. We all got paid. Booz Allen Hamilton got paid. Everybody got paid, okay? Everybody in Washington is incredibly rich. So they call themselves strategic consultants, Blinken and the rest that worked at West Exec. Why? Because if you're a lobbyist or you are working for a foreign government, you have to register as a lobbyist, and then a whole bunch of rules kick in because they all lied and said, oh yeah, people that work for Obama, we're not gonna go be lobbyists. And then they're like, okay, we are strategic consultants. And then they also don't wanna be registered as foreign agents.
Right.
And so what they do is they could say we're consultants so we don't have to register. Now, two sets of people come on and give us tons and tons and tons of money because we have influence, and we're gonna go through the revolving door and back into government, and we'll do you giant favors, and everybody knows that's the game in Washington. Anyone denying that is totally, utterly full of crap so they can sleep at night, right? One is foreign governments. They funnel money to think tanks, they funnel money to lobbyists, and yes, they funnel money to strategic consultants. And that's a way for foreign governments to just buy our government, knowing that there's a revolving door. But actually the bigger problem is defense contractors. And defense contractors go and go, oh, you have this very important expertise and stuff. We'll put you on our board, which Flournoy, which is one of the main partners, she's one of the main partners at West Exec, is on a board of a defense contractor. And they go, here's millions of dollars we're pouring into you consultants. Oh, look at that. You come back out and then you're in favor of more war. What a fun coincidence for us. We all get rich, everybody dies all across the world. The stuff they do in Washington, it's the stuff of horror movies.
Yep.
We just put a pretty face on it with people in nice suits. That gobbledygook that he just told you Blinken did about the ceasefire, well, it sounded like he was supportive of a ceasefire. No, he was using legalese diplomatic words for saying we are not calling for a ceasefire. If both parties want a ceasefire, the Palestinians already do. In other words, if Israel doesn't want a ceasefire, we're not gonna say ceasefire. Because what did we working for the US government? Don't be ridiculous. Oh, you can't question, come on guys. If you live in Washington, telling the rest of us that millions of dollars don't affect people, that's cute. And you guys live in a fantasy world where you've all convinced yourselves that that's true enough that you can sleep at night. The rest of the country doesn't believe you at all. We think you're totally influenced by the millions of dollars that you put in your pocket to support these wars, and whether they're starting them or continuing them. Now,
one more quote.
Okay.
This is the quote that this is everything. Okay, and then I'll stop. So again, from Dan Shapiro, who worked closely with Anthony Blinken at West Exec. At the beginning of the fiscal year, the funds, meaning funds to Israel, the funds are provided to Israel, and almost all those funds go into long-term purchases of major US military systems, F-15, F-16, F-35, various helicopter platforms, tanks, and various munitions. The vast majority material is really aimed to counter, not threats that emerge from the Palestinian arena, although somewhat you could argue from Gaza, but from Syria, Lebanon, Hezbollah, Iran, the future or the further future threats, and certainly the missile defense programs also fall very much into that category.
Yeah, more euphemisms. In other words, yes, we will bomb the living crap out of Gaza. Yes, we will bomb Lebanon with American-made weapons, but don't worry, Lockheed Martin got paid, or whichever defense contractor. And so again, they all got rich though, so bless their hearts for caring so much about all. They don't even pretend to care about peace. Let's move on. So look, there is a sea change in that now finally people are willing to say Palestinians are human beings. That is a giant change in America. Before they were all called terrorists, basically. They were never right. They were never right in the media. They were never right in Congress. They were all terrorists that had it coming, right? Now, one thing that's affected is more videos. Videos of dead kids Kids with the bomb just destroyed their house. The dad who lost 3 of his kids and 4 of his
kids,
and the nephews and nieces, right? And so 8 kids overall. And you see the pictures and you see the video and you go, oh, it turns out they are human. We were led to believe they were all terrorists by our media, by our Congress. It turns out we are actually killing human beings, 4-year-olds, babies, 8-year-olds. We're killing all of them, right? And so that is a sea change and it makes a big difference. But let's go back to Congress. So on the other hand, you have Tom Cotton, who just came out and said the Associated Press, a bunch of whiny reporters, quote, whiny reporters, because the building that they were housed in was blown up by the Israeli Defense Forces. So now, of course, every victim must be blamed. So the Palestinians were victims, so they were terrorists. The Associated Press now is victims because their building was bombed. And now they're no longer media, they're whiny reporters who were at fault. Tom Cotton says the Associated Press should have told Israeli Defense Forces about whatever things they might or might not have known about Hamas. Otherwise, their building should be bombed. Don't whine about us, destroying your entire building or killing the families. Don't whine about it. We're just killing you. What's all the whining about? Well, okay, if you're a bloodthirsty murderer like Tom Cotton, who in effect in his policies, guys, Tom Cotton doesn't go to anybody's house and kill them, right? But when they say yes, we want Israel or Turkey or any other country, Saudi Arabia and Yemen, yes, we are in favor of their current policy, which is death and destruction. It is murder either way. Those people actually die. The grandmothers actually die, the kids actually die. All right, last thing. Now, there are those missiles that we sold, the weapons that we just sold Israel, that deal happened on May 5th. Now, you're telling me that Israel did not plan the Al-Aqsa Mosque raid right after they got $735 billion in weapons. Like, does anybody really believe that? Like that it was the Palestinians after the Israelis got more weapons. Let's start a fight, right? No, we saw that Netanyahu's forces attacked Al-Aqsa Mosque. Now that doesn't mean that they got the weapons right away. They don't get them on May 6th. We can actually still block the sale, right? But they know that sale's not going to get blocked. So they've secured that weaponry. Now they can attack. And so the timing, in my opinion, and in the opinion of anyone following the fact pattern here, is fairly clear. And finally, since we are still within a time period where Congress can object to those weapon sales, as we did in Yemen, which Congress should get a lot of credit for, it would still be a non-binding resolution and Biden could override it, but they could do a resolution saying that we should not sell these weapons to Israel if this is how they're going to use it. We will not do that. So no matter how many 30 Democratic senators there are, no matter how many folks that are doing a wonderful job of protesting these actions in the House, they're not going to get majorities. Pelosi's not going to agree to it. Schumer's not going to agree to it. Nobody in Democratic leadership is going to agree to it. They will continue the bombings. They will continue the weapon sales. People will continue to get rich, especially the defense contractors. And those kids will continue to die. Because at the end of the day, the American government is never, ever, ever going to hold the Israeli government accountable, no matter what they do, no matter how right-wing they are, no matter how much they're led by a guy who's a combination of Dick Cheney and Donald Trump. No, even Democrats at the end of the day will still say, proceed. You have a blank check to do anything you want. And here it is. By the way, the blank check provided by the American taxpayers. We give 3.8 billion on top, we give the weapons on top, and we give the green light on top. So when you see those dead families in Palestine, we did that. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.